the line go, and all of a sudden they have lost all control of the line. Their loop has gone absolutely berserk. And so what we want to do, gently but very firmly, hold the line, keep it well gripped in the left hand. There will come times on our forward cast when we will want to let some line slip through to lengthen the cast a little bit. This is called shooting the line. After your technique gets a little better, there are times when you will even want to, under controlled conditions, let a little line slip on your back cast. But for right now, let's just hold the line with our forefinger and thumb in our left hand.
Dan, that brings up a good point, line control. When you're first learning to cast, just try to cast a little bit of line, 15 to 20 feet. You don't want to start learning how to cast 50 feet of line and get out of control. And that brings up a point, learning to strip the line in.
One of the problems is that people finish their cast, sometimes they will just let the line go, and then they have to do this problem when they want to start stripping the line in of reaching all the way up here in order to grip it. What we would like to teach you to do is, as you make the cast, immediately your left hand comes up to the top end of the cork handle, and when you do, just loop the line over your index finger. And this will again help us to control in our stripping action. And I can do this without even looking at the line. If it's done correctly, everything is done automatically. This isn't just some vague philosophy or theory we're talking about. This is very practical for fishing conditions, learning to strip the line, keeping the line under control at all times.
You've had a lot of information thrown at you. Now it's time to put it all together in a nice, smooth cast.
As I get ready for the basic cast, I remind myself of these things. I start the rod tip low into the water, bring in the slack, bring the rod up to 9 o'clock in order to start accelerating the line off the water. I'm going to be bringing it up to 10 o'clock and continuing that accelerating action, bringing the back cast a little past noon, stopping it, allowing the line to unfurl, starting my forward cast with a very short power stroke, and then letting the forward cast form its loop. And this is how it will look when we bring it all together. You do not have to exert a lot of energy in doing this. A lot of people think that they're going to have to eat 5 boxes of Wheaties in order to cast for a day. It does not take a lot of energy. It just takes graceful, good timing, and just let the rod do the work for you.
We've showed you the basic cast, and we're going to be showing you more different types of casts when we go streamside, teaching you how to catch a fish. But if you want to learn more about casting, there's some excellent videos out. Fly Casting with Mel Krieger, the Outdoor Safari series with Lefty Cray, and 3M's Fly Casting series with both Doug Swisher and Gary Borger. These will help you improve your casting. All we're doing is giving you the basics.
Yeah, I think another thing we ought to mention here, when you're going to tie a fly on, never bite the leader. You're always tempted to, and your dentist is going to yell at you, but there's a big reason to not do that. When you bite a leader, you flare the end of it out. And like a little fly like this is about a size 16, it can be real difficult to thread the leader through the eye of the hook. So always take the leader, put it in the clippers and cut it at an angle. See how I'm doing that? Cut it at about a 45-degree angle. You really can't see that, but that's now cut at a 45-degree angle, so it has a little point on it. And then it'll go right through the eye of the hook as long as you line it up. If it's flared out because you bit it, then you can work all evening trying to get that through there. And if the light's bad and the fish are rising, it can be pretty frustrating.
And now, speaking of knots, we're going to show you the most common knots when tying on a fly like Mike's.
One of the most important knots is an improved clinch knot, and that's tying your fly onto your leader. We'll show you how to do it. Go up to the eye, get out a reasonable length of leader, and we wrap the leader around, just like that, about 5 to 6 times. Then back through that little loop. See that little loop right there? Go back through. Now we formed another loop right here. We're going to bring that leader back around and through. We'll bring it right up, hold onto it, and pull, just like that. Another important knot is called a blood knot, and it's used to attach 2 different sizes of tippets together. I'm going to form an X. We're going to wrap the green over the orange. This represents different size of tippets. Come back with the green where that little V is. Bring it through. Then grasp it with our hand. Go back around with our orange, forming a loop there. Now, we see this tippet, it's come out of the hole. So then we've got to go back through with the orange into the hole, just like that. Now, notice that we have 2 loops right through the middle, just like that. Now we reach up, hold on, and pull, just like that. And you have a blood knot. Boy, let me tell you, it's going to take some practice. But once you get it, it'll be the easiest way of attaching tippets. We're now going to attach our leader butt to our fly line. This is called a nail knot. We're going to use a Mudas tool. Now we lay the fly line on top of the tool. We're going to wrap around. Notice how it's holding our fly line in. You can do this knot by hand. It may not come out as pretty. But this little tool really does a professional job of tying in this little hard knot. Like that, go right underneath the loops that you've made. Make sure it's secure. Now we're going to slip it off. Again, we're cinching up, making sure it is tight, so all the loops will be nice and even. Now we take it off the tool, and we pull. There we go. A nice professional nail knot.
One of the ways to progress past just learning to cast and fishing for a smaller fish is going out with the professional fly fishing guide. Mike, you operate a guide service. What do your guides teach the clients?
Well, I think there's no better way to learn than actually being on the stream and doing everything rather than learning to cast out on a lawn. Catching fish in a river is the way to learn, and the guides can certainly help you do that.
We both operated fly fishing schools, and we've seen the practical part of fly fishing. And I think it's nothing better is coming out here in the West and casting a fly to a rising fish.
Before we start fly fishing for trout, we need to understand more about our friend the trout, one of nature's most fascinating creatures. Graceful, slick, quick and wary, trout love cold, clear water. While trout seem at times incredibly intelligent, they act on instincts. They eat, they watch for predators, mate, and with a little luck, survive to be caught by the fishermen. While most fly fishermen release their friends back into the water, the trout learns quickly to identify his enemies. Since most of the trout predators come from outside the water, his eyesight must protect him from this threat. He has a 97-degree angle that he can see above him. The fly fisherman should be aware of this and strive to keep fly lines and his own shadow and body movement out of the trout's window. When an angler strives to sneak up on a trout, he should come from behind, because a trout can not only see, but he can hear the angler. They have a great sense of presence when they know there's an angler casting a fly towards them. It takes a great deal of experience to learn not to spook a trout, knowing how to cast the fly, making sure that the line or a flash from a reel or anything that might spook the trout. It could be too heavy a leader, the wrong fly. Which brings us to the point of the trout feeding. The angler must approach the trout from the correct angle. Present the proper cast without letting the trout know that the fisherman is stalking him. Since our quarry acts on instincts, the time to pursue him is during his feeding time. Trout love insects, especially adult insects floating on the surface. When a trout moves to the surface to engulf the fly, it is called a rise. When the insects are flying and hitting the water, and the fish are rising steadily, this is called a hatch. Since the trout are rising and feeding voraciously, they become easier to catch, provided the angler can match the hatch with the proper artificial fly. Size and color of the artificials are crucial. This magic time is what fly fishermen dream about. Fishing the hatch. While fishing to the ring of a rising trout may be the most exciting, it can be limited. Trout feed more consistently under the surface on a variety of insects, bait fish, and other life forms. Learning to fish under the surface can become critical to the angler who wants to be successful most of the time he travels to his favorite fishing spot. Currents drive food deep into the trout's lair, and depending on the season of the year, will determine when and where you'll fish. Learning where to cast for trout will create more productive fishing time, and discovering where trout live will help in this quest. Let's take a look at rivers and streams. Realize that trout desire cold water, and during warm weather will retreat to deeper water. The coolness of the evening and morning will bring the trout out, only if there's feed. Water temperature affects not only trout, but its insect life. Now let's take a look at some of the structure in the streams and where you'll find trout. Currents will dig into the banks and form what we call big, deep pools. This, of course, has the lowest water temperature. The deeper the water, the cooler the temperature. Currents affect streams and provide cover for trout. The swirling current will deepen the holes. Consequently, you'll find a great deal of trout when it comes to the deep holes. Also, currents will undercut the banks, again providing cover and, of course, coolness, as the overhang of the bank provides shade. The fly fisherman has discovered that casting from a drifting boat can help the fly get up underneath the banks, and you can be more productive. The fly angler should search algs or even rocks or heavy current, anywhere a trout can hide and get protection. The current will bring feed to the trout. The more you fish this structure, the more successful you'll become. To understand fly fishing, we must understand the trout's food, like the insects that are in the water. This is a caddis, one of the 3 forms of insects. This is an adult caddis, and it comes in different sizes and colors. And we tie our dry flies to match these adult insects that float on the surface. This is an elk-hair caddis, one of our most popular dry flies. The insects start out in cases on the bottom of the stream bed. They break their case, then head to the surface. On this journey to the surface, they're very vulnerable to the trout. The trout love them, and they snarf them up. This form of fly fishing is called nymphing, and it's deadly. As the nymphs drift up to the surface, the fish take them prolifically. As they break the surface and become adults, the fish continue to feed. This is a mayfly, another form of insects. Once they've broke the surface, they spin around until they come back to the water to lay their eggs. And then the trout go crazy as they rise, grabbing the adult insects as they lay their eggs. This is what the fly fisherman loves, and he imitates it with his dry flies. Fishing the rise is probably the most fun of all fly fishing, picking out a rising fish. But again, in the mayflies, we have nymph forms, and we imitate those with a variety of different types of nymphs. There are literally thousands of different types of mayflies. One of the more popular insects is the big stonefly. And there's a variety of different sizes of stonefly, but really, they're a fast water insect. We match them with heavy hair flies. In our western waters, it can be some of the most exciting fly fishing to fish a stonefly hatch. But before the hatch, the nymphal stage can bring some of the biggest fish. Because of this, the fly tire has gone wild, creating stonefly imitations, some that show movement with the use of things like rubber legs. To recap this, we have stoneflies, mayflies, and caddisflies that come out of our streams. But we have other insects like crane flies, damselflies, and dragonflies. But we have other insects that don't come from the water like hoppers. Boy, that can be exciting fishing. Think about ants, beetles, and even crickets. There's a whole variety of insects that fall into the water, and the fly tires have gone wild imitating them. Here's even a crayfish. In some of our streams, trout love them. But one of the most popular ways of fishing is with streamers that imitate minnows, such as sculpins and shiners, and the movement of the streamers to imitate a live fish going through the water. The fly tire, again, has gone crazy with imitations. Fly fishing in a lake offers another smorgasbord of all the insects we've talked about. But there's another insect, leeches, and we offer a variety of different types of imitations for this very important lake insect. Probably some of the biggest fish caught in fly fishing is caught on leech patterns in our lakes.
Insects are a very integral part of a fly fisherman's life. As you can see right now, if you look out here, we have fish rising right now. There's a hatch going on. Maybe little PMDs, could be some caddis, could be some little blue wings even. We don't know until we get into that water and we find a bug, we take a peek at it and see what it is. That's how we're going to get these fish to eat our fly. One thing that's very important to realize when you're fishing is a life cycle of a bug. So it starts on the bottom of the river, underneath rocks, on weeds, on the bottom of the stream. A nymph will stick to. A nymph, that's the first stage of the life cycle. The bug starts down there at the bottom. As it becomes an adult, it's going to come up to the top. Okay, we call that an emerging stage. That's an emerging stage of a bug, right before it hatches. Once it hatches, it becomes a dun. That's what you're seeing on top, a mayfly dun. There's three basic types of insects in a stream. You have mayflies, you have caddis, and you have stoneflies, all of which are in streams, all of which trout love. That's why it becomes a little confusing on what to use. You got to really match that hatch and get these fish to eat. Talking about mayflies, we're talking about a few different kinds of bugs. Mainly a PMD, a blue wing, and a mahogany dun. You can identify a mayfly by the upwing. You're going to see it sitting on top of that water. It's going to look beautiful up there for you. When you're looking at a mayfly, we're going to be looking for two things. First and foremost, the size. They can range anywhere from a 22, even a 24, all the way up there. I mean, a size 10. You can get big mayflies out here sometimes. The next thing we're going to look at is the color. Whether it's a mahogany, kind of a reddish, dunnish color, a blue wing, more of a green, kind of a dunnish color also, or a PMD. You're going to get you can get a pale yellow. You can get even an orange-looking bug. All those things play an integral role in catching these fish. Now we're going to talk about a caddisfly. Caddisflies are everywhere. They're here, they're west, they're east, they're north, they're south. You're going to find a caddisfly if you find a stream, there's going to be caddis on there. Now we're going to talk about a caddisfly and the life cycle of a caddisfly. Caddisflies, again, are going to start on the bottom of the river, attach themselves to rocks, weeds, whatever's down there. They're then going to kind of zoom up to the top. It's more of a quick pace. They aren't going to just kind of, it's different from a mayfly. They're a little bit quicker bug. They're going to come up to the top, zoom up to the top, and the big difference between a caddis and a mayfly is caddis do not have to dry their wings. They're going to get up to the top, and boom, they're going to get there, gone. They're up and away. A mayfly is going to sit there. What we have to remember about a caddisfly is this. When a caddisfly doesn't dry its wings and it gets up top right away, it has to come back to lay its eggs. That's when we get the fish on the caddisflies. When they come back down, lay their eggs, they're down there, they're pretty vulnerable at this stage. That's when the fish eat them, and that's when we're going to throw. That's the kind of pattern we're going to throw to get them. Next, we're going to talk about stoneflies. Stoneflies are a little bit bigger bug. Not all of them are big. You have big bugs and you have smaller bugs, but there's a bigger range of size when you're talking about a stonefly compared to a caddis and a mayfly. Stoneflies love real fast, quick water. You're not going to find them in lazy, calm water for the most part. For the most part, they're going to be in fast, quick-moving current. They like that. They like to get that oxygen. They have gills, and they like that oxygen. That's how they breathe. They, too, will attach to a rock. Stoneflies now are a little bit different. They crawl. They're going to get over to the bank, and they crawl up on the bank, up onto, let's say, a log, a rock, a limb, what have you, anything like that. And then they're going to sit there, they're going to dry up, and they're going to fly on out of there, okay? These things, we call them salmon flies, little yellow sallies, stone flies, all that kind of stuff. They're going to fly up. They lay their eggs also, kind of like a caddis. It's going to drop down to the bottom. They're going to hit the water, and when these things hit, they make a pretty big commotion on the water. Trout love that. They see that. This is a big hatch for us. It doesn't last long generally. It's a short hatch, but when it happens, you got to be there and you got to get those fish during that hatch. I'd like to talk to you about a selection of nymph patterns to have in your box. First and foremost, you got to have some stoneflies. All these ones right over here, right down here first is a prince nymph. This is a good imitation of a good stonefly pattern. Fish love to eat this. This is a good searching pattern also when you're just using a nymph. If you want to drop a fly out, a little nymph off the back of a dry fly, if you're going to just be nymphing with an indicator, this is a good searching pattern. Another series of flies is called attractor patterns, most commonly known the wolf, the royal wolf. Because of the upwing in the wolf patterns, it's going to look like a mayfly pattern. Not only can you use a royal wolf, but you can also use a pear wolf, an Adams wolf. There's a lot of different wolves out there, all of which are going to look kind of like a mayfly pattern. The next thing we're going to talk about is the downwing attractor pattern, the stimulator. The stimulator is going to emulate anywhere from it can be a hopper, it can be a caddisfly, depending on the size and the color. That's why the angler should have a wide variety of body colors and sizes. Anywhere from a size 6 for a hopper, all the way down to a size 18 for a caddis. You got to have them for the trout. Terrestrials are hoppers, ants, beetles, whatever lives on land gets blown or falls into the water. That's these guys right here. Let's first look at a hopper. This grasshopper right here. It's got some grasshopper legs. It's also got a nice big foam head. Very easy to see for the trout fishermen. The next thing I want to talk to you about are some mayflies. Dark mayflies and light mayflies. First of all, we got the PMD, the pale morning dun. This is it's going to emulate a light mayfly. What we have down here are parachute Adams. Okay, that's going to emulate your darker mayfly, your mahoganies, your blue wing owls, that kind of a mayfly. I picked mayflies here with parachute posts on them. Because I did that, they're easy to see. Every single one of these is going to be very easy to see. You apply a little bit of float into it, this is the part you're going to be able to see. The trout's not going to see that. The trout's going to see the body of the mayfly, whether it's light or dark. That's the big thing with the mayflies. Another big thing with the mayfly are the sizes. You can go anywhere from a size 14 all the way to a size 22, it doesn't matter. But trout can be very finicky. If they're eating size 20 mayflies, little PMDs, and you have a size, 16 mayfly on there, not gonna eat it. They're gonna come up, refuse it, you're not gonna catch your fish. You gotta match the hatch, you gotta match the size, and you gotta match the color. Very important when you're trout fishing. As you get further along in your trout fishing, you're gonna start building a collection of flies. You're not just gonna have parachute flies. There's a lot of variety out there. Keep in mind, size and color, very important, very important. The next thing we're gonna talk about are caddis flies. These guys right here. We have an elk hair caddis, which is gonna emulate the adult caddis on top when it's laying its eggs, bouncing up and down. We talked about that earlier in the video. The next one we're gonna talk about here is an emerging caddis. Before it becomes an adult, it's gotta emerge from the bottom. That's when it's rising to the top. Trout take this fly kind of in the film. It's not going to be on top, it's not going to be way underneath the surface. It's going to be right underneath that surface. They're going to be very subtle takes. They're tougher to see than the rise on top. Very important part of the trout's diet is the emerging stage. The angler should always have some emergers in his box. Now let's talk about some streamer patterns you should have in your fly box. First, let's start with the minnow patterns. Things are going to emulate minnows. First of all, we got shad patterns. This guy right here, it's a great little shad pattern. It's going to emulate, it's more natural looking than most of your minnow looking patterns. Doesn't have any kind of a cone head, doesn't have any kind of a bead head. It's not going to be too heavy, it's going to kind of ride nice and high in the water column, which is nice. The other things we have here, they're called double bunnies. They're going to go down nice and deep. They're very heavy flies, also emulating shad patterns. The cone heads are going to get you down deeper in the water column. This is going to be up a little bit higher in the water column. Both are very key to have in your fly box. This is probably your standby fly. If nothing's working, put on the cone head kiwi, you're probably going to get a strike from a fish. Great pattern to have in your fly box. The next flies we're going to talk about here are woolly buggers. These can imitate a multitude of things in the water, depending on how you fish them. Whether you strip it naturally, whether you twitch it, or whether you dead drift it. It's an attractor pattern for a streamer. Just like for a dry fly, we have them for streamers too. If you strip these things nice and naturally, it's going to look like a leech. If you dead drift this, it's going to look like a big stonefly nymph tumbling in the water. If it's an erratic, coming back forth to you, it's going to look like a minnow pattern, maybe even a sculpin pattern. A few things that differ on these things are colors. Some of them have legs, some of them don't. And I want to point out one key thing on this fly right here. I don't know if you can see that, but it's got a little flash right down the middle of the body. That's what we call a lateral line. All fish have a lateral line. This is very important on a woolly bugger pattern.
Fly fisherman. And quite frankly, it's a heck of a lot more exciting to have a trout on.
One of the first places that a lot of fly fishermen start out fishing is still water. It can be a lake or it can be a pond, but there's some rules to remember about fishing still water. The thing to remember about fishing lakes is the food is there all the time. In other words, it's not like in a river where an insect flows by the fish, you better grab it then or it's gone. In a lake, the feed's there. So the fish reacts differently. They tend to feed a lot slower, and they tend to feed in patterns, in circles. Lots of time, the mistake that the angler makes fishing still water is not attracting the fish to take the fly. That means, like in a dry fly, maybe sometimes adding a little twitch to the fly. Or in a streamer, adding just the right retrieve that attracts the fish to take the fly. The fish can really see the fly, so you have to be exacting on your imitations. In still water, it's really pretty clear cut. The fish are either feeding or they're not. And when they're not feeding, it's real tough to get them to strike. But when they are feeding, you must match the insects almost exact. And you got to watch your tippet size because of the clear water. And we talk about still waters. It could be a great big pool of a river. It could be a little pond or a little spring.